with Greg and Richard right here on Talking Red.
Hello and welcome to Talking Reds, a Nottingham Forest podcast hosted by myself, Greg Oram, and my podcast partner, Richard Spray. We're back with another one of our One With episodes, and our guest today is no stranger to the Nottingham Forest podcast world, a man who has worked tirelessly as one half of the Forest All Over podcast to bring fans together of our great club from all around the world, and a regular post-match contributor on Forest Focus. He certainly gets around a bit. With a soft Irish lilt and a passion for Forest as much as anyone, our guest is outspoken but measured, controversial but balanced, and fiery, but still able to offer sensible and valid points on our wonderful great club. We've been asking for over a year, and he's finally here. So please sit back and enjoy the One With Chris Aylmer.
Connection established.
Richard Spray, Richard Spray, Richard Spray, Richard Spray. We have just re-energized the Forest machine!
Guess who just got back today? Them wild-eyed boys that had been away haven't changed, had much to say, but man, I still think them cats are crazy. You got a bad reputation. That's the word out on the town.
Robertson, the first time we've seen them attack them, and there's Francis! Well, that's what I wanted to see Robertson do.
You gotta turn yourself around. Turn yourself around. Upside down. We've got a little black guy that will turn him inside out.
John Robertson.
Yeah, very talented, highly skilled, unbelievable outside left. He'll turn him inside out.
Chris Aylmer, how you doing, buddy? Great to have you with us.
I'm good. Listen, the intro with Thin Lizzy and Phil Lynott, the dub, who's an absolute legend, Dublin legend here. Phil Lynott, there's a statue of him outside. I love it. I thought it was great. I think he is a Man United fan, unfortunately, but he, absolute legend. Thanks for the intro.
Well, listen, we like to try and make people feel welcome as much as possible. And, I know that you've commented on intros in the past and been quite appreciative of them. So I thought, I need to come up with something special, something Irish. It's got to be Thin Lizzy. They're the best Irish band that's ever been produced, possibly from that great country. And that ever so epic Richard Spray. Yeah, I had to use that. So it's great to have you with us, Chris. As I said in the intro, it has been a while coming. I know that everyone's busy, but it's great to have you finally here. We're going to get into it. But before we do that, I want to say to anyone watching or listening on X or on YouTube, please do get involved in the comments and let us know you're here. We will try and give you shout outs. The Cheese Trader is with us, and Stu Freestone. Don't forget, we have a great sponsor, and he's in York, and we'll chat about him a bit later on. The Garibaldi Nerd is with us as well, as is Andrew Cove, the Grand Madness. He says Chris is a legend, a great guest to have on. Going to hear some of his Tories. I think he's supposed to say stories. Not sure we're going to talk about the Tories, and that's a whole different podcast. Got Pete Blackburn with us in the comments. He said he's just got the notification during his dog walk, so he's going to have a listen along. Great to have you with us as well, Pete, and a few others joining us as well, Danscape and Brucey as well. Right, okay, like and subscribe, guys. Push the button. Let us know that you appreciate us by liking and subscribing if you can. Okay, let's get into it. Chris, we ask everyone, why are you a Forest fan? What is your Forest story? You're from Ireland. We know that about you, but why Forest?
So, Richard might be able to test this. I know he had family that was what started Richard off as being a Forest fan. But if you're a Forest fan from a different part of the world, generally, I think you usually would have some sort of a unique story or a different story. With me, I grew up in Ireland in the 90s. I was born in the 80s, but I grew up in the 90s. And there was an explosion of football and everything was, just Sky Sports was coming in. And that's kind of the birth of me watching football, was the birth of Sky Sports. It was kind of everywhere. And yeah, I started supporting, I think, football early on. I think my brother had like an Aston Villa jersey. This is when I was like 5 or 6, and he passed it down to me. And Ray Houghton, who was an Irish sporting legend at the time. There was USA 94 was happening, and the Republic of Ireland were doing really well in that as well. So a lot of this stuff was sort of bubbling underneath. And I was, this might sound unique to Forest fans from Nottingham, but when you're in a different country and you're younger, you're flirting with different teams, even the dreaded Man United, Arsenal. My brother was an Arsenal fan at the time when I think Arsene Wenger was just about to take over. And yeah, I was sort of searching for a club after a couple of years of just following football and watching and liking different clubs, be it the enemy or Aston Villa. And I ended up being I think I was about 8 or 9 years old, and a friend of mine came up to me and he said, "Hey, do you want to support Nottingham Forest?" I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, my sister's boyfriend, I can't even remember his name, happens to support this team, Nottingham Forest. They're really cool. They've got a cool crest. Their kit is slick. Do you want to do it?" And I said, "Yeah, why not?" Supported them. 1996, 97 was the season. 1996, I started supporting them. We got relegated that first season, and I just kind of stuck with them, and I became obsessed. I actually think I became more obsessed than my friend. And luckily for me, the following year, his dad brought me, when I was about 10 or 11 years old, over to Nottingham for a football game, because he could see how obsessed we both were with the team. And it was Forest against Ipswich. Van Hooijdonk scored a late winner. I was already hooked before then, because I'd followed us right down through that sort of Division 1, old championships. It's not the championship nowadays, but Division 1 journey. And I was just hooked. And I remember going to the city of Nottingham, and I'd supported Forest for a year and a half, and everyone thought I was peculiar back in Ireland, going, "Why do you support them?" And I remember seeing the Nottingham Post or whatever it was and going, "Oh my gosh, they actually have a sports section for Nottingham Forest." I thought that was really cool, because I had to search it out over in Ireland. So yeah, that's kind of how it started. On a playground, one of my mates wanted me to support them. I was 9 years old. I went with it, and I never looked back.
That's got to be one of the most random answers to how you manage to support a football team. But I love it. We talk about it often on here, about how you come to Forest. And yeah, I got it from my dad, and we know Richard got it from his grandfather. But to get it in the playground and to run with it like you have done is pretty amazing. Richard Spray, I haven't even had a chance to say hello to you on this episode yet, because I fiddled around my intro a little bit and all that kind of thing. Didn't make a fuss of you so much. Want to make a fuss of Chris. Chris is here. How you doing, Rich?
That's right. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, we have some restitution apparently in the chat. We never gave Pete Blackburn his own intro, so we got to get on that, Greg. Got to find a Pete Blackburn intro, but that's all right. Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. This is one of my favorite human beings on the planet to talk to. I think we probably talk, Chris, at least weekly. And he is just the best person to talk to at halftime of a match, because he just gets you so excited again. Like, even if you're feeling like absolutely down in the doldrums, he just finds a way to kind of get you energized and get you positive and all that. So we appreciate him greatly. Yeah, it's been an absolute honor to get him on here. So thanks again, Chris.
Way too kind. Way too kind. One of the best people. It was way too kind.
And Greg, this is the sad part. He's been crowned my son Mason's favorite person in the world to listen to. Like, whenever we're in the car, like yesterday, we were in the car and he's like, "Hey, do you mind if we listen to Chris?" And I was like, "Sure." I was like, "You don't want to listen to Art?" And he was like, "Yeah, we can listen to that later, but can we listen to Chris?" So I was like, "All right." So apparently, Greg, we're not the favorite podcast in
the Irish Lilt, as I said. It's just, I'm
telling you,
it's that kind of like comes out. It just makes you feel good. It does. It's good. But I mean, I was interested to learn. I didn't know this about you, Chris, but Richard kind of told me a while ago. Your background is similar in some ways to mine, in that you train as an actor and you've worked in film and a bit of directing, I think, as well, and other stuff like that. So was that always your aim? And did you go off to drama school or something? And how did that all happen out of school?
Long story short, my dad was an actor. When I was growing up, my dad, he wasn't like a famous actor at all, but he was he started acting really late. It was something that he was really passionate about. He was made redundant in the early 90s and he decided to go into acting. And as junior, me and my brother my dad would push us into these things called feshes, which are like poetry competitions or whatever in Ireland. So since I was about 6 years old, I've been doing it. I kept it up, my brother didn't, and I sort of did pretty well when I was younger as like a school kid to a teenager, and then eventually did a foundation course when I was 18, 19, and then went off to drama school in the UK and did a degree in acting in a drama school where I met Matt, the other half of my podcast, and we became friends because of our love of Forest as well. And that was kind of the main reason, and we lived together and stuff. But yeah, I trained as an actor originally, and then started writing and producing and directing my own stuff. And I've obviously gone and done various different jobs along the way, from hospitality to sales to other stuff to keep me ticking over. And I did go freelance at one point for a few years with screenwriting and producing sort of film stuff. But yeah, that's kind of my passion. I'm now just doing sort of like 1 or 2 projects every year or two to keep myself ticking over. But I've done a lot of theater and film stuff in the past, and I have acted. Yeah, but it came from my dad originally. Yeah,
that's incredible. Yeah, what about it must be kind of a natural sort of transition. I know Matt's really good at impressions because he does quite a good impression of you. He's decent impressions of others. But yeah, so what was it like for you two developing Forest All Over, and how important has that been in terms of just kind of getting that scratching that creative itch in a different way and developing that and connecting with people all over the world? How important has that been for you? Just the process of developing that and connecting with folks.
To be honest, like Forest All Over was never it was never connected to, me and Matt having done some film directing or producing or writing or acting. It was never really connected to that at all. It was more like Matt and I were in, college together 20 years ago, and we lived together, and we just loved Forest together. And this was in the League One days. I'd be going to Gillingham away. We'd go to QPR a lot because we were living in West London together. And prior to that, when I was younger, like I said, I used to, I couldn't find anything Forest. I used to tune in. I used to get into my mum's Opel Astra and tune into the radio waves to listen to some UK commentary of Nottingham Forest. Or I used to click on my NTL, the subscription that I didn't have, and it would scramble the screen, and it would hold off for a bit, and I could watch Forest beating Norwich 4-1, and then 30 seconds later it would scramble again. And that's kind of how I was trying to find Forest over the years. I'd have to scramble around, refresh teletext, if you remember that. And all that stuff that happened years ago, I remember thinking, gosh, it's great to connect people who are in different parts of the world. And at the time, I was living in Canada, where I met my wife. I was living in Canada, in Toronto, or just outside a place called Hamilton. And I remember just being like, it was COVID, it was lockdown, and I remember meeting up with Matt or on sort of Skype or whatever it was, Zoom. And I remember saying, like, gosh, like this Forest stuff without it is kind of horrible. Like, how long's football going to shut down for? We didn't know. And we kind of just decided to like sort of start talking about Forest. And then we were like, let's record it, let's do a podcast about it. And that was kind of the natural sort of juxtaposition from doing anything else to talking about Forest Weekly, but on camera. And I suppose we decided pretty early on, you know what, I'm in Canada, you're in London or Nottingham. Why don't we make it about being all over the world? And then it just kind of grew from there. And we immediately, for the first 5-10 episodes, got people on from Hawaii, Australia, all around the world, and kind of made it about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's really been something that we have been inspired by. We try to do a little bit of that as well, to kind of carry that mantle on as well, and try and acknowledge that fans all over the world of our great club have that barrier where they can't get to a game, and they perhaps don't have a community where they can just talk about Forest, because they might be the only Forest fan in their town. Maybe they live in New Zealand or live in Australia or wherever it may be. And we've learned that podcasts are so powerful in terms of bringing people together. And so I wonder what you've learned about that from doing Forest All Over with Matt, and the sort of the power of football itself, or the power of Forest as a connecting point for people. What have you kind of learned along the way about that?
I think I've learned so much about it. Like, obviously, I've always, self-indulgently thought of myself as this Forest fan from outside the country, not really thought about other people. Where can I watch the game? How can I do this? But I never really connected it to, all these fan groups are popping up all over the place. And at the time, Matt and I had been to the Toronto Trickies, which was, Matt had come over, we were filming something together, and we'd been to the Toronto Trickies to watch us beat Leeds 2-0, that famous game where Tyler Walker, I think, scored last minute to win 2-0 against Leeds. And we were at that, and we were kind of looking at the group, and we're like, wow, this is amazing. And the more we did the podcast, the more people we met from different parts of the world. There was Milan in Serbia who had a fan group that he created, and they played five-a-side football, and it's a big shout out to him, actually. And the Simon in Bahamas, who was like one of the only Forest fans there, but he'd got his kids involved and made sort of like a mini fan group there with his kids. And then, just various different fan groups. And I think it just inspired me more to keep going, kind of. The guy in Hawaii was from the US, and he was in his full army getup, in his full army uniform, taking a break in one of the vans on a little phone, doing a thing and telling us how he was trying to watch games at 2-3 o'clock in the morning. Like, it was crazy. So I just learned there's so many other people in so many different parts of the world that had gone to such extreme lengths to not only watch Forest, but then create their own fan group and get other people involved. And then we sort of followed that trail, and we're like, oh, this is unique. We've got to run with this. And then obviously there's the odd episode where me and Matt are just me and him having a go at each other. But for the most part, it was about that. And it was just really, really special to see all the different fans in different parts of the world trying their hardest to get any etch of Nottingham Forest in their life. And I thought that was really cool because, Man United, Liverpool, yeah, of course it's going to be all over the world. Chelsea, yeah, of course. They've globalized it. They've got money coming out their ears. But with Forest, I never suspected it. When we found people in China or Hawaii or Australia, whatever, it just blew up. It was just amazing to see.
That video you did, if you guys haven't seen the last episode, it's not the last episode. I know you'll talk about, or you have talked about it being something that you guys will do occasionally as well, which is great that you'll continue to do it. Because I know a few of us, Bruce, he's in the comments right now talking about how you connected him to people, and he's become a good friend of mine too. And he's a great Forest fan, and kind of like you, he just kind of came upon the club, right? He just wasn't something that we were sort of born into. But can you distill it? I mean, that video you did for Matt was great, of all the different memories over like the 5-year period. Can you distill it to, like, is there one moment that you can kind of say, this is the top one? This is the one that I remember that resonates the most. It's probably hard to do that because there's so many great guests and people you've connected with and from different parts of the world. I mean, I'm curious to know if that's even possible.
It's hard to do one. I mean, Taku and Co last year, NFFC Japan, he'd come over from Japan, and I even met him before the game that he was going to. Matt Davies was there actually with his daughter, and Greg and Will, and they were sat at the table, and we just done a podcast with them in the week, and it just kind of felt like fate. And that was amazing doing the one with them. We had a translator translating for Taku. That was cool. That was a really cool episode. I think that's Matt's favorite. But my favorite, one of my favorites is, like, probably, I went to the Bahamas with my wife, just on a holiday 2 or 3 years ago. We were living in Canada at the time, so it was easier to get there, right? It's not like I went from, but Simon picked us up from the airport, and he listened to the podcast, and he was Bahamas Forest, and he picked us up, and I did an episode with him and his kids, just as Forest had got promoted to the Premier League, and his kids were chatting on it. That's probably one of my favorites, because that was like the essence of what it was all about. Family, Forest all over the world in a different exotic country, and then Forest had just got promoted, so there's this real excitement. That's probably one of my favorites. That's the peak for me.
So you guys have spoken about that you stopped. 5 years felt like it was perhaps the right time to bring to an end your weekly episodes. How much of a difficult kind of decision was that? Because it gets addictive, and you love talking about Forest. And I know you said you're going to come back and do occasional specials here and there. But who said first, I think we should stop? Has it been something that's been on the cards for a while? Because obviously, it's for those watching and listening, a lot of kind of groundwork goes into episodes. People don't perhaps realize that we don't just kind of turn up and sit down and start talking. There is prep work that happens, and we've got full-time jobs, and you're jobbing as well. So how did it all kind of come about that you guys thought we should stop?
I think what happened was the first 1 or 2 years, and it was audio only for the first 4 years. And the first 1 or 2 years, we tried our best to keep it going, and it was the Houghton years as well. It was desperate, and I remember we were doing like one every 2 weeks, and then occasionally it would trail off and be one every 3 weeks or one every month, and then it was back to every week, and then it just sort of sped up from there and kept going. But I think Matt like, if he's honest with himself, my co-host, he probably lost the love of it somewhere after a couple of years. But then he'd get that Forest bug and he'd come back and he'd love the episodes and love talking about Forest again. And I was kind of pushing it along. But Matt did a lot of the groundwork early on. Like, he did a lot of the editing. He did, like, I did all the promotions, but he did a lot of stuff early on. And I think he was kind of like in his mind trying to fade it out. And I just never give him the option. I'd be like, we're doing it. We're still doing it. And then Forest just, like, you know, went up and we just kept it going. And then we did video. We started video last year for the first time doing YouTube stuff. And he didn't really like that. He preferred the audio stuff. So I think it came from him originally. Like, he kind of wanted to stop. But I would have kept going and would have had other people on, which I have done. I've had various different guests on. Some of them are in the comments right now. Bruce, Andrew. I would have kept going. But I think about Christmas time, I was kind of like running out of steam myself. And I was like, look, I enjoy going on Forest Focus and doing post-match there. Shout out to Matt Davies, legend. I enjoy doing that. I enjoy talking Forest. But like you say, Greg, it's a lot of work, right? It's a lot of promotional work. You know, there's some editing involved. If an episode goes wrong or whatever, there's technical issues. There's pinning down times to get guests to come in. What are we going to talk about? How are we going to be slightly different to the others? Or are we just going to go for it? There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. And I think 5 years felt right. And what felt right more than anything was, okay, you know, it's like that sort of second, third album thing. You know, if Oasis were always talking about, imagine we just stopped after that big gig back in 96, 97. We go out on a high. And I was kind of like, you know what? Forest are heading for Europe. We can go out on a high. We started in tragedy and we can go out in an explosion of a high. And I think it just kind of felt right. So last Christmas we decided to sort of end it. Sorry, I'm answering these questions with a really long, boring answers, but
that's why you're here. If you keep it short, then we'll have a very short episode. So by all means, please answer the way you're doing, because it's interesting because we popped up a year ago and we've spoken extensively that Richard and I were obviously watching Forest Focus and got to know each other through that. And yeah, Matt Davis and all the Forest Focus guys, brilliant. We love them. And Red Side of the Trent and, you know, Forest Fan TV, Wolfie gets a lot of hassle. I know that he divides opinion. He's been wonderful to us. And so I'll always speak up for him because he's been great with us. But I've always felt that there's enough room for like as many different people that want to kind of content create and talk about Forest as possible. I always talk about having our own little corner of the podcast world. We're not looking to, you know, we're not monetizing and taking over and making loads of money. It's just a platform because we want to talk about Nottingham Forest and we want to do something different. And we try and be a bit different with the intros and the madness and some of that kind of stuff. So I guess I'm kind of, what I'm leaning towards is how difficult is it to be original when you're trying to create content, even because we're all talking about the same thing. We're all talking about the new transfers. We're all talking about the game that's been. We're all talking about the game that's coming up. So the content or the material is all the same. So it's very difficult to be different, isn't it?
Yeah, I think if you're coming up with like different formats or segments or different things, like me and Matt used to come up with these things all the time. You know, we had the Red Hot Take or the Blame Game or whatever. It can be tricky because you're kind of doing variations of what everyone else is doing. Some are a bit more conservative, some are a bit more wild, like ours was at times. But I think it can be tricky. But I think ultimately it's not about what you come up with. It's not even about talking about the same thing. Talking Reds, Red Side of the Trent, Forest Focus, Forest Over, all of them, Forest Fan TV. They could all be talking about the same thing. The originality comes from the person, really. You know, if I was to sit and listen to you and Richard, I want to hear what your opinion is on it and your kind of nuanced take on it. And it might even be a similar take to what's said on, say, Red Side of the Trent or our podcast, but it's the way in which you say it. And I think that's really the only way you can go about it, because we're going to be talking about the same things. We're all going to be talking about the same incidents that happen in games. Matt, to be fair to him, my co-host, was very good at like being original accidentally. He would come up with random facts and random things about football because he doesn't know very much about it. But ultimately, I think it's just about the person, and people like listening to various different people. I listen to a load of Forest podcasts for different reasons. The same stuff comes up on them, but they're all original to me during the week, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's awesome. I actually, one of my favorite things, it was one of the first podcasts I listened to, aside from Forest Focus, of course, which I've told you about, Chris. And it's been great to connect with Andy and to connect with Bruce and then and Ross as well. Ross Taylor, who's just an amazing guy as well. I'm curious. I've never asked you this, and maybe I missed it through the course of listening to the podcast. How in the world did Statsman Will get involved? Like, was he a friend of yours? Like, because I definitely want to get him and Dan Cook connected, because they both live in Sheffield. They're both very cerebral guys. They're both into the stats. I'm like, those guys could definitely hang out and have a pint and have a good time talking about Forest, talking about the stats around Forest. But I'm just curious, how did Will get involved in this? Because he's been a huge part of this, probably more than anyone outside of you and Matt, obviously. But he always ends up being that arbitrator too, that like sort of like keeps you guys somewhat, from killing each other, as much as that's humanly possible through virtual airwaves. But yeah, and I love that too. I love that rawness and authenticity about your guys' relationship. It's so good. But I'm just curious, like I've never known where Will kind of came into the foray.
Well, with Statsman Will, he basically was mates with Matt they're from the same area in Nottingham, right? And they're from the same area, and they were mates since they were kids. And then Matt and I went to sort of, uni or college, whatever you call it was drama school at the time, in London together. And then I'd go to games with Matt, like League One games at the time. And as a result, I met Will through Matt, because he was like, Will's my mate. He's a Forest fan. You'll like him. So I've known Will about 15, 20 years, as long as I've known Matt. And Will was always kind of like the voice of reason, this mediator in the middle of like Matt asking stupid questions, in my opinion. Maybe they weren't stupid questions, and me sort of responding to them with like venom and anger. And he was always the mediator. And we set up a WhatsApp group maybe 10 years ago for Forest, just me, Matt, and Will. That's it. And most of the time it's just me and Matt arguing and Will stepping in. And yeah, we were doing the podcast, and we were like, Will, do you want to come on? And we got him on fairly early. And then that was it. We never even told anyone where he came from, where he fit in, but we just told him. So yeah, that's how Will got involved.
Fantastic. Okay, right. We ask everybody who comes on to come up with their all-time favourite personal Nottingham Forest 11. We have Aylmer's Reds on the screen. I'll go through your selection, Chris, and then we can talk about one or two picks. So Bruce Samba is your goalkeeper. Stuart Pearce at left back, of course, with Murillo and Dawson at centre back, and Ola Aina on your right. You've gone 4-4-2 by the looks of things. So Andy Reid on the left, Brennan Johnson on the right, Roy Keane and Morgan Gibbs-White in the midfield, and up front, Pierre Van Hooijdonk and David Johnson. So father and son combination in there. It's never a wrong answer, because everyone's got their own favourites. It doesn't have to be the best players. But David Johnson, he is your sort of striker alongside Pierre Van Hooijdonk. Why have you picked David?
I picked DJ because first of all, this team is a collective of players that when I supported Forest all through the years, these are players I've seen play for Forest, except for one, but he had to be in there. And we'll go through that now in a minute. But David Johnson was at a time where it was the first time. Well, no, actually, it wasn't the first time. That was sort of the 97, 98, the first time we were really good in my eyes. But it was that time in the sort of early 2000s when we went in that playoff run. And I think DJ came from Ipswich, and I just knew he was a goal scorer, and he just kept it up, and he was so consistent, and I just absolutely loved him. And, he scored in those two playoff semi-finals against Sheffield United. And I just absolutely loved watching him play. He scored that goal where, was it Rob Green or one of the goalkeepers threw the ball out and he ran behind him and scored it. He waited behind the post. And he just scored so many goals in that period of those 3 or 4 years. I just absolutely loved him. He was like one of those strikers that I just absolutely adored. And I always remember his playoff semi-final goals. They stick out to me. So for me, that's why I chose him. He was a great goal scorer, and I just loved those moments.
Perfect reasons to pick him. So who's the player that you didn't see?
I didn't see Roy Keane play for Forest. Unfortunately, I supported Forest 1996. Keane had already gone to Man United by then, and I didn't see him play for Forest. But in my heart, I felt I had to have him in because I'd seen him play for Ireland. I'd been to World Cup qualifying games down at Lansdowne Road, down around the corner here, and I absolutely adored watching him play for Ireland. He was like a captain, and he is our best ever player. I don't care, like Damien Duff, Robbie Keane, he's Ireland's best ever player. Captain of one of the most popular Premier League teams of all time, Man United. And then to learn after the fact that I'd started supporting him, that he played for Forest for 3 years, almost as a number 8. He was a bit more box to box. He actually scored more goals for Nottingham Forest than he did for Man United, right? He was just a legend. So he has to be in there. If I have a team up there and someone says, why isn't Roy Keane there? I can't give them an answer other than I didn't see him play for us. So yeah, that's why he's there.
Well, you did try and pick 12 players, but I had to put my foot down and say that, Brian Clough couldn't pick 12 on a Saturday. So I know you had a little bit of a headache in 1 or 2 positions. But Andy Reid, another famous Irishman who I absolutely adore. I mean, I was at West Ham when he scored that amazing goal, literally left foot, long distance, wearing the Inter Milan kit. Absolutely fantastic. So he's in your team for more than being Irish, though, right?
100%. Listen, Reedy was a class act, right? Like he could probably play anywhere in midfield. He was just technically brilliant. Some of his passing was like insane. I remember his second spell when he came back to us. We beat Watford 3-2. I think we were down 2-0. We won 3 or 4-2. And he played this insane sort of crossfield diagonal ball. I think it was to Rice Henderson at the time. I don't know. And I just remember thinking, God, he just does it with such ease. He was just so technically good. And, I love those players that go away and come back as well. Like, there's a load of Forest players who've gone away to Spurs and come back. Dawson, Reid, Jenness, Brennan Johnson, hopefully one day. But you know what I mean? I love that. And yeah, he was just technically class. I just loved watching both spells where he was with us, the first few years and then the last sort of few years he was with us as well. Fantastic.
We'll talk about one more player, the goalkeeper, Brice Samba. He was a little bit of a shithouse, to say the very least. Tell us why you picked him.
Brice he's such a lovable keeper if he's on your team. And for everyone else who's playing against him, they hate him. And that's why he's in my team. I want someone who they hate, but we absolutely adore. And he was just a legend. He was class. And you can't look past, like, Sells has had the best season any goalkeeper has had in my eyes since I've been supporting Forest. Matt Sells has had that. But Samba had the personality and he had the pizzazz, and he just, that penalty shootout, like, just ridiculous stuff. Just ridiculous. And the saves off the bar and stuff. So yeah, for me, Samba, he got us promoted. He was an absolute legend. And then the penalty shootout against Sheffield United to right the wrong of all those years ago. That's why he's there. Legend.
Yeah, I think you've summed it up perfectly. There we go. Aylmer's Reds, a fantastic team. And we thank you very much for putting that together for us, Chris. All right, let's take a very short break.
The Cheese Trader, based on Grape Lane in York, is a cheese lover's paradise. Home to some wonderful specialty cheeses, relishes and chutneys, and also with a fantastic street food menu. Try their loaded fries or posh cheese on toast. It'll be the best you've ever had. Owned by Forest fan Stu Freestone, the Cheese Trader proudly sponsors Talking Reds. Quote Talking Reds every time to get 10% off your order. The Cheese Trader and Talking Reds, the perfect cheesy mix.
It's the perfect cheesy mix. Stu Freestone, I'm not sure if he's in the comments still, but he is a legend and the cheese is rather good. I've been very fortunate enough to have a few cheese hampers come through in the time, and I can recommend them thoroughly. So please do check out the Cheese Trader in York. All the links and all the details are in the bio to this episode. Okay, let's get ourselves into the second half of the pod. I guess it's time, I suppose, to do this.
The lightning round!
Yes, sir. Our unashamed love for friends, Chris, as you probably are acutely aware. I'm sure I've shared that with you many, many times. So in honor of that, the lightning round. So we'll start off with favorite Forest player of all time.
I have to go Andy Reid. I have to, because it is partly because he's Irish, but as I said, I just absolutely adored watching him play. And he came back for the second spell and he was brilliant. So Andy Reid is my favorite Forest player of all time.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. What about what was that? I think that's actually the first time someone said Andy Reid, which is great. Most of the time they say Psycho, right, Greg? It's usually everyone's favorite. Yeah. So what about your first Forest match live? You may have touched on it earlier, but just a reminder.
Ipswich, home, 1998, 2-1 win. Jamie Scowcroft scored for them, or Jason Scowcroft scored for Ipswich. They went 1-0 up, and then we scored 2. Colin Cooper and Van Hooydonk chipped it over the keeper and slid in front of me in the Trent end. And I was in love. And I actually got this exact jersey outside the stadium that day. So yeah.
And you can still wear it? My God.
I know. I'm
Just
jealous.
about. No, just about. There was two. My brother was an Arsenal fan. We got one for me and one for him, and I think this might be the bigger one. There was two of them, but yeah, it's either this one or the other one. But trust me, there's a belly hanging out here somewhere.
Trust me, I dream of trying to get into some of the shirts I had as a younger person. It's just not going to happen.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, one day, Greg. We'll get there eventually, right?
Yeah. Me and Richard have been talking about going on a calorie controlled episode over the last year or so, but we still haven't got that far yet. Anyway,
No, not
we
yet.
digress.
What player in Forest history would you like to see on the current squad?
Oh, I'd love to see Roy Keane. I never saw him play for Forest when I was a Forest fan. So yeah,
He'd be
it's gotta
great right
Roy.
now too.
Number
Yep.
6. Just a legend. Yeah, Roy Keane.
Yeah, I think Ando's kind of inching his way towards that, isn't he? So that kind of player, brilliant. Your favorite away or third kit?
Like I could go easy and say this away kit that I'm wearing now, because it was just at a time, 97, 98, that I really loved watching Forest. I remember Kevin Campbell scoring a lot of goals in this jersey as well, Bart Williams, etc. Van Hooijdonk. So this one, or there was another one that I did get, which was like 15 years old, and it was like a black and blue at the top. It was black and then had a little bit of blue across the top. I think it might have been a third kit. That might have been like 2009. Somewhere around then, 2008. So yeah, those are my two favorites.
Fantastic. What is your favorite Forest moment or memory?
Gosh, do you know what? So obviously I could say my favorite moment is my first game that I was at the game and Van Hooijdonk scored the winner, and that is one of them. More recently, you could say Wembley, right? Being at Wembley, us getting promoted, tears next to my cousin who I convinced to support Forest as well. But there's a moment in 1998 where we scored, and I just felt the excitement. And Bart Williams scored against Reading in a drab game that was 0-0 the whole way through. Reading were getting relegated. And I just remember the commentary, might have been Rob Hawthorne, going, Bart Williams, and he's through here. And in the end, Forest will say, it doesn't matter how you play as long as you win it. And I just remember that moment forever. I was just so excited because I knew it had us promoted. And that sort of sticks with me. That's what sticks with me as a Forest fan all these years. That's what kept me hooked, was that one moment. So I'm going to go with that.
I love it because I love that everybody has these like a all-time starting 11. There's always this different sort of spin on things, a little bit more out of the box, because a lot of people have said Wembley, which is understandable, of course, because that's pretty huge. If you weren't a Forest fan, what club would you support?
Oh gosh, probably Villa, because early days there was a lot of Irish players in the team: Paul McGrath, Andy Townsend, Ray Houghton, Steve Staunton, etc., etc. And at the time, my brother had that Villa jersey. I might have slipped into Arsenal because of him. So I'm going to go Aston Villa if I had to choose, because I really like Aston Villa. They're another big Midlands club. They've won a European Cup back in the day as well, just like us. They have good history, and they're fighting PSR now, and I'd like to see them do well. Aston Villa, I'd say.
Yeah, that was one of the best conversations you and I think it was the last episode with Matt, where you're trying to convince him about the parallels between us and Villa, and it just wasn't working. For some reason, it wasn't resonating with him. But I agree with it
at all.
Yeah,
not at those, but yeah,
that's right. Apart from Brian Clough, who was your favorite Forest manager?
Steve Cooper. I think just the way in which we got promoted that season will be remembered forever. No one's done that. I've dug into the books. I know Roy Keane took Sunderland from the bottom of the division to champions. That was a pretty big deal. But they'd already won a few games, I think, by the time he got in charge. The way in which we were 7 games out of win, 1 point on the board away at Derby. And Cooper comes in and does that. It has to be Steve Cooper. That was just an unbelievable magic season. But other than that, I love Dave Bassett, by the way. I actually love Dave Bassett. I love that 97-98 season and what he created. So, yeah, Cooper. But if not Cooper, Bassett.
Brilliant. If Forest could sign a player from a non-top 6 side, who would it be?
From a non-top 6 side? Gosh. Well,
your non-traditional top 6. You say Villa, probably, we normally say Villa are allowed in this conversation.
Right. So like, okay, so you'd be including Man United, even though they finished 15th and they're pathetic.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't take any of their players. A non-top 6, probably. Do you know what? Probably someone like Eze, where it's just that spark that just like, he is just phenomenal player. That's the first one that comes to mind. If you're talking Villa, Rodgers, but I'd say so like Eze for me, just an absolute legend. So yeah, someone like Eze who can just game changer.
Fantastic. Can't argue with that. All right. I think I know the answers. Morgan Gibbs White, time to sell or desperate to keep?
Our game changer is Morgan Gibbs White. Our Eze is Morgan Gibbs White. Keep him. Of course, it's going to leave a big void and a big hole in the squad. It's going to be difficult to replace. And I know people say, we can replace, those stats and the goals and the assists and whatever, but it's kind of what he brings all around. It's the aura he has and the moments in games he has where he can change the game. That Leicester game recently where we drew 2-2 or whatever, like he changed the game. He scored that header and then that unbelievable ball for Chris Wood just gave us that spark. Those are moments he's the Superman. He's that kind of player that can do that. I'd keep him. Yeah, I'd 100% keep him. Different question would be, who would you get rid of if you had to get rid of one? But I just wouldn't get rid of him. He's our franchise player, as they say in the States. Keep him.
Yeah, gotcha. FA Cup or Champions League?
Oh, it's changed now, hasn't it? I don't know. Like do you know what? Well, based on this season, because that's the easiest way to do it. At one point in time, we had a chance to win the FA Cup and we had a chance to go to the Champions League, right? We had that moment. We had the conversations. Everyone was asking the question. At the time, a lot of people were saying, my co-host at the time was saying FA Cup, definitely, it's the trophy. That's all well and good. Like Palace won the FA Cup. That's an amazing day when you see that. Or when you see Newcastle win the League Cup, you go, oh my gosh, they've had that moment forever. But like after time, I think it fades a little bit. Or maybe it doesn't for some people. Making Champions League this year would have been like historic. Like it would have been Leicester winning the league levels historic. The way in which we finished 17th last year and then came back and did that. So for me, it's not only the achievement of getting into the Champions League and playing against Bayern Munich or PSG or whoever. It was never anything to do with that. It was to do with we would have finished in the top 5 amongst the elites in the Premier League, in the hardest league in the world. So even finishing that high, even finishing 7th is amazing. So that was what it was for me. And it was that stamp of, hey, we're top 4 here, guys. That's who we are. So for me, Champions League all the way.
Brilliant. All right, final question. Forest win the Premier League,
Greg disagrees with that one. Do you, Greg? Greg disagrees.
He loves the FA
his face. I can see his face. He's disagreeing with me. No, go on.
Listen,
go on.
I'm FA Cup all the way for the reasons in reverse to what you just said. Basically, I think football was about winning things. That's what football's there for. Brian Clough said it as well. Football is about winning things, and I just think that getting into the Champions League's great and the money's great, but I want the traditional old school kind of like heart on your sleeve kind of moment, and I don't think it would ever fade. Forest winning the FA Cup, having had nothing on the trophy cabinet for so long, I think it would have been astonishingly good, and that would have got us into the Europa League, and we build from there, and the Champions League comes after that.
Here's a question before we go on. I don't want to waste your time here. Here's a question.
No wasting.
Let's say Forest get through our playoff, we get into the Conference League, and then we get to the final, right? If we win the Conference League, European trophy, sure, it's the 3rd tier European trophy. But if we win it, would you look back and go, actually, it was worth getting knocked out of the Champions League in order just to have this moment?
That's what I've been saying since.
I've
been saying that because I think that the club might have struggled in the Champions League. It might have been too much too soon. So Conference League that we can absolutely win means that you can then go into Europe for a second season in a row. It could have been that we go into the Champions League, we struggle because we haven't got the squad. That affects the Premier League form. We don't have an enjoyable time in the Champions League. We bow out either in the bottom 8 of the division, or we get through luckily and then we bow out, and then we finish 10th or below, and that's the end of the European conversation. Whereas the European conversation goes on for another season, I think, when we win the Conference League and we qualify straight into the Europa League next season, I think is a much more valuable and valid building block. And it's a trophy. And whether it's the 2nd or the 3rd or the 55th European trophy in order of preference, it's still a European trophy. And when I remember watching West Ham lift it, I know Chelsea lifted it. They looked chuffed to bits. And in their most recent history, they've had Champions League wins. And they've won a lot of trophies in the last 20 years. So they were still chuffed to bits. And I think for us to win a trophy, the 3rd tier, the bronze medal position, as Ross Taylor so eloquently described it, I'm happy with that. We're in the bronze medal place to go into the Conference League, and I think we can win that. And I think it'd be so much better for the club to kind of push us forward. So I think getting into the Champions League would have been great, but it might have been it potentially could have been quite short-termist. Could have been like a one-season wonder in the Champions League. Whereas I kind of feel that we can get into this competition and we can win it. So there we go. I've interrupted your lightning round with that.
No. I was the one that interrupted myself, but I think I'm more of a roll the dice, all or nothing man. Like, let's go to the Champions League. Let's see what we got against these giants, because we're still sleeping giants, kind of thing. That's what But I think if we get to the final, ask me again. If we win the Conference League, ask me again, because I think I might change my mind, because I'll be like, actually, it might have been worth it to do it this way around. Just like people say, oh, was it worth it to have that Stoke capitulation on the last day for a year and a half, 2 years later to go up the way we did under Cooper? And it certainly was. So yeah, I don't know. Anyway, just food for thought.
I'd even take finishing 17th in the Prem and winning the Conference League. I'd take that.
I don't know. I don't know if I would do that, because actually, I might take it, but I'd roll the dice and say we can do well on the league as well, because we're
I don't want that. I don't want it, but I'm just saying, if someone said to me now, you can win the Conference League, but you finish 17th, like, yeah, because the next season after we're in the Europa League and off we go again. You know, it's just there's always another season. Yeah. There's always another season to come. So anyway, last question.
Your last statement's the one that worries me a little bit, right? Just that, is it the right trajectory? Because that's what the pragmatist just starts kicking in. I think Raf's kind of in the same headspace as me with this. It's like you want the Villa kind of organic, sort of like progressive sort of thing where we do get there and we build that squad, you know, because I think there would have been a temptation just to unload, you know, throw all your money at a Gyökeres or something to try to get him in, just so you can compete in a different way against the Champions League. But then it's like, if you don't get it and you slip down the Premier League, because it is a new cadence of matches and fixtures, it's just like, oh my goodness, do we want to be in some like weird, you know, speaking of the question that we have right now, do we want to get into that position where we suddenly get dropped down, or we're back in that relegation zone? And it's just, that I was so happy. Just even if it would meant that we finished 10th, or like we predicted 12th, right, Greg? I mean, even that would have been exciting, just because it's just not languishing in that sort of basement area where it's just not fun. You know, it's elating to stay up for sure. And Cooper did that, which, as I talked about in the Under the Skin video that just came out recently, how wonderful that was. But it's like, ugh, I don't want to do that again.
But last season was like, the PSR season was horrible. Like that kind of.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Searching for Luton's results. You know, it was kind of. It's kind of horrific, but yeah, no, you're right. I think
speaking of
it's an interesting question. My question is, like, at the end, if we win the Conference League, we win that European trophy, will everyone look at each other and go, I'm kind of glad we didn't get to the Champions League? Now, actually, that journey of what happened where we were so close but didn't make it, it's better now because of where we are. So we'll see what happens. We have to win it. Of course.
I agree with that. Forest win. So speaking of what you don't want to see happen, Forest win. Well, at least I don't. Forest win the Premier League, but are then relegated into the Championship for the next 25 years. Would you take it? And we all have witnessed this, and we never. Well, there's still great moments, but this is just. I would not want to see that. I'd give up winning the Premier League.
So win the Premier League, but you're gone for 25 years.
Yeah, the next season you're down for the next 25 years.
25 years. That's the cost.
Oh gosh,
would you take it to win the Premier League?
I'm kind of like, will we just have that one moment? Because I'm all or nothing. We'll take the moment and we'll play Rotherham next week. It's fine. Jeez, I don't know. I think 25 years is too much. 25 years is too long. But I'm tempted to just give me that moment. You said it's all about trophies, Greg. The Premier League, it's all about. Would you take it, Greg?
I might, because I'll follow Forest wherever they are. They could go and play in the Isthmian Premier League. I don't care.
You already did. We were already at League One games against Gillingham. So I don't know. The answer for me is, so boring. I always sit in the fence, but I think I'm going to go no, because I believe in this club to do more than that anyway. I believe in us to go and win another FA Cup or a League Cup and be up there. So I'm going to say no because I believe in them. Boring answer, but no because I believe in them to do well in the Premier League for 10, 15 years.
Okay.
All right, buddy. Thank you. Lightning round.
Amazing.
I am so good at lightning rounds.
Okay, right. Time is against us. So let's kind of have a bit of a chat more about our fantastic club, The season has been done, Chris, for a couple of weeks now. The dust is settled. Can you properly sum up your emotions now a little bit? Can you tell us how now it's all sunk in, how you're feeling?
Yeah. I think we haven't seen Forest do what they did this season for years. Some fans haven't seen Forest do what they did this season at all. I haven't seen Forest do what they did this season ever in my life. I missed out on that 95-96. I think it was 9th place finish. And the year before, 3rd place finish, I started supporting Forest. First season we got relegated. So for me, just like one of the most incredible years supporting Forest in my life. Went to quite a few games, some home, some away. Met lots of wonderful people. Was doing the podcast throughout. Richard Sprague come on a few times, and we were just talking about how amazing the season was. Could it get any better? And to sum it up, I think it's bittersweet, but sweet bitter, kind of in reverse. Because you had that moment at the end where like every opportunity to get the highest echelon of competition, which was Champions League, and then obviously just to not quite get over the line at the back end. So amazing season, one of the best of my lifetime, but a weird feeling, mixed feelings for the end, because Forest usually finished strong and we didn't. And that's the only tough part of it. Yeah. But like one of the best seasons of my life, you know.
It was a season of so many highs. The lows came at the end when we kind of just ran out of steam. Couldn't quite get it over the line, as you say, but so many highs. What was your favourite moment out of all the moments? Winning at Anfield, winning at Old Trafford, the 7-0. Was there one, or what is the one that stands out as the one that's the favourite for you?
I think for me, everyone probably thinks I'm going to say beating Man United back-to-back, or that Elanga goal and then beating them. That's definitely right up there. You know, just beating Man United.
Tackle him! For God's sake, tackle him! Why aren't you tackling him?
Those moments were class. The best moment of the season for me was just after Christmas. And I could see that the Liverpool game was coming on the fixture list. And I was talking to one of my mates here who's a Liverpool fan. And I was saying, gosh, like in a few weeks, imagine it's sort of first v second, kind of like tongue in cheek. And then we kept winning. We beat Spurs. We then beat Everton. And then we had to beat Wolves to sort of set that up. I think we were going to be level on points with Arsenal. So we were like joint second going into that Liverpool game. And we did it. And we set up what was a title contenders clash at the time. It was 4 or 5 months into the season already, and Forest were the only team, along with Arsenal, competing with Liverpool. And the night that I watched, I think it was a Tuesday night that game was on, I sat in the room watching it on my own. I just thought, this is magical. This is what it's all about. We're actually in it with the top team, one of the top teams in the world right now, and we're giving them a go. And we scored first half. We played our game perfectly. And I just said to myself before the game, I really hope we step up to the plate today and play our game the best we can. And I think we did. I actually think we were brilliant against Liverpool. Second half, they were all over us, but I just felt like that was the best moment for me, because it encapsulates everything that went on with the season. And I knew after that, I knew we were going to have peaks and falls and everything, but just that moment right in the middle, we were right there at the top for that moment. And that's my favorite moment for sure.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. It's tough. It's just like this question I'm about to ask you. I mean, it's a difficult thing to try to define which one thing, right? Because there's just so many good things that you witnessed comparison to, seasons previous, like you referenced. But player of the season, who was your favorite player of the season this year? I think you've talked about it on your podcast, but I'm curious if you've had a chance to change your mind or reassess that, because I think I have.
Yeah, no, I'm not changing my mind. It's Matt Sells. Like, clean sheets, Golden Glove, the joint with David Raya. Very unlucky not to get it all out in his own, because there was a couple of late goals that Spurs and West Ham scored against us in those wins. The Everton game, I was at that horrendous late goal. Like, Sells should have been the clear winner of the Golden Glove, but he still won it. Some of the saves he made throughout the season in general were just remarkable. If you go back in every single game, there's a highlight reel of his saves. I think the Premier League released some highlight reels of some saves recently, and he had about 4 or 5 in there. There's way more than that. I was at a Chelsea away game earlier on in the season, and he was just stunning. That was kind of the beginning of it for him. The save off the bar from the Brighton Danny Welbeck effort. Just some of the save. There was a Man United away game where he did get fingertips to it off the bar. from a Bruno Fernandes free kick, which would have changed the game early on. And there was another one off the bar, Eze Palace. There's so many saves. He was amazing. He stepped up to a point where, like, I didn't expect that from any player. And I know Milenkovic changed our defense, and I know Elanga was brilliant with all the assists he brought. I know Wood scored 20 goals. But Sells surprised me. Wood had scored 14 goals the year before. So, okay, I didn't expect him to score 20, but I thought maybe he'll get 10, 15. Who knows? But Sells was just like a whole outer worldly experience for me. Matt Sells, all the way, player of the season for me.
I hear you, and I'm still a Milenkovic fan, and I have been a big, fan of his, and how I felt he got the best out of players around him, and was a big reason as to why the whole team was performing. But I must admit, seeing Matt Sells perform the way he did gave me quite a big sense of gratitude, because we'd kind of backed him quite a bit on this podcast. When he came in, me and Richard were talking, when the season closed last year, we were saying, we think the goalkeeper position is sorted. Okay, he's not set the world on fire since he came in from Strasbourg in the January window. And I know that Turner and Vlachodin must have been so terrible that any kind of upgrade was going to look potentially quite good. But I thought he did okay. And I know that there are others out there that think, well, the stats were really bad and he was really poo and he wasn't very good. And I just didn't really think that. And so I was really chuffed to see him completely go from strength to strength to strength this season. So yeah, you can't argue with Matt Sells. Everything you've talked about there, worthy of anyone's choice to be the player of the season. Time is against us, Chris, but I wanted to ask you, we were talking about Europe and going into the Conference League. I mean, there is still potentially a chance that we could end up in Europa. I don't think it will happen, but what are your thoughts on the whole Crystal Palace Europa debate? I mean, where are you at? I mean, if they get kicked out, would you feel a little bit like we got in through the back door and you wouldn't want it?
It's not that I wouldn't want it. I just think, look, Palace won the FA Cup. They deserve to be in there. That's like, I don't mind Crystal Palace at all as a team. So, yeah, look, if you're offering it to me, of course I'm going to take it because I'm a Forest fan. But, like, I now have my mind set on the Conference League and trying to win that. Like, get through that playoff, get into the group stages and focus on trying to win that competition. So, like, it's just kind of like blurring the lines a little bit for me of what I've gone for Champions League. Oh, Europa, no, Conference, stay with Conference. Oh no, it might be, I just don't need to be thinking that much about it. I just want to get to the playoff and know what competition we're in. No, look, of course I take it as a Forest fan. You got to be selfish when you've had so many years of hurt like we have. But look, they do deserve it. They deserve to be in there. Palace deserve to be in the UEFA. But the big picture here is, well, why are we constantly painted to be the villains? Like, because we sent a letter that no one's seen to UEFA, and all of a sudden Palace fans go, "You're a disgrace," and everyone jumps on the bandwagon. And then within a day, we find out they're probably sorted anyway. It's like, okay, the media didn't spin that. Yeah, of course they did. And I just think ever since we've come into the Premier League, we've upset everyone. We've upset the apple cart, the 30 signing, the tweet about the VAR situation, Clattenburg, Neville. It's always us. And the media love to paint us as the villains, probably because our owner is quite a polarizing person. And now this is just another thing that does that. And I just think, even now, I still think there's neutral fans out there, Villa, Newcastle, Palace, whoever. We're kind of like, I still quite like Forest, even though they're doing all this like cloak and dagger villainy that I don't think we're doing, by the way. But yeah, I just think that's kind of the big picture and the big takeaway from it. Would I take it? Yeah, of course. But I think, look, Palace deserve it. Just let them get on with it, and we'll go and try and win the Conference League, and we'll do as well as we did this year, hopefully in the league as well. That's my thing about it.
Yeah, I'm with you that I think Palace deserve it, but I also am of the opinion that, look, there are rules in place, and if they are deemed to be part of a multi-club ownership model, then ultimately, if it means that they get booted out and we benefit, that's not really anything to do with us. And I'm with you all the way on the letter. I'm absolutely certain that the letter didn't say anything about Palace. It was more, can you tell us what's going on? We want to get our ducks in a row so that we know what we're doing ahead of going into next season and which competition we're in. So you're right. We get painted to be the big bad boys.
I also think, sorry, Greg, I also think, like, look, we all know it's not going to happen. Like, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't think the Palace are going to get kicked out of the Europa League. I just don't think it's going to happen.
They just booted out another team from the conference.
Drogheda, an Irish team, I think, have had an issue with multi-club ownership. I know that's happened, but like, we've got reports in now already that most likely Palace are going to be in there. And I felt like that would be the case the whole time. I just did, because I've seen that other clubs have kind of done it before. So I didn't think, for missing a deadline on the form, which they shouldn't have missed, by the way, I didn't think that they'd get kicked out. So I never really considered it in my head. And then watching all the online back and forth, I was kind of like, oh gosh, this is a waste of everyone's time. But yeah, look, I know what you're saying. But another thing as well is I have to be consistent. I was annoyed at the PSR rules last year, and I think that they're stupid. And I think that they've ring-fenced the top 6 or the Super 6 to a degree.
Yeah,
6 clubs who tried to leave the league, by the way, a few years ago. We've forgotten that. But like, I think those rules. So with these UEFA rules, I think some of them are a bit silly as well. And I think, okay, they missed the deadline. I haven't got empathy for Palace over us. I'm just saying, I know it's not going to happen. So I've kind of like, pushed it out of my mind, if that makes sense, Greg. And I just want to ourselves.
Yeah, because it's Palace and because it's their first trophy they've ever won, and the reward for winning that is to get into Europe. And because Palace are Palace, they're not, they're like us. They're like a hard-working club. Exactly. So you genuinely want them to go and enjoy it. And I agree with all that. But ultimately the rules are the rules. And so like I said, I'll take it if it comes our way. I wanted to quickly ask you about the Botafogo boys as well. The 3 Brazilians. It looks like all 3 will come. I know one of them, Cuiabano, was potentially people were talking about Brighton stepping up their interest in him again to try and nab him. But they're off to the Club World Cup that starts tomorrow. So my view is that as soon as Botafogo go out, we'll sign them and make it official. You excited about that trio coming in?
Yeah, like obviously, like everyone else, I don't know enough about them to fully comment, but I am excited because we've had a bit of a pipeline to Brazil with Danilo and Murillo coming in, and both of them have been excellent. Murillo has been like revelationary. So yeah, I'm excited because I trust the recruitment who've made these decisions before that have worked out. Of course, I've seen the highlight reels of Jesus, and I'm going, yeah. Jesus is the next Jesus, brilliant. And I've done all that like everyone else. Cuiabano looks class, but like Brighton look like they're in for him. But that, if we get him, then that feeds me with confidence because Brighton's recruitment has always been brilliant. So if they're looking at the players that we're looking at, I'm going, okay, hang on, there's something here. And then you have Jair Cunha, who is 6'5" and very good with his feet. And look, one of them has to work out, don't they? I mean, who knows? Maybe the other string of trio of signings that we've had in the past didn't work out, but these might all work out. I'm excited because I know that we're doing business early. That's what I'm excited about. The window opened for a little bit for a few days, and we were straight in. We were straight on top of this. So there's a reason for that. And the recruitment has done a great job over the last couple of years. So I trust them, and I'm excited. And I'm excited for more signings as well, because I think we're going to make them, and I think we're going to need them, especially if we're in Europe.
Well, and you talk about signings, Ross Wilson, right? Maybe going to Newcastle. And then there's one guy who you just talked about earlier, who's been had one of the best partnerships with a fellow striker, a fellow forward, with Chris Wood in the last 2 seasons. He's won Anthony Elanga, and he's been absolutely fantastic. So what happens? What is the price point for you? In your heart of hearts, do you think he'll leave, or do you think we'll sell him if we get the right price? Because he's such a huge part of our club right now and a huge part of our success this season, and he's moving in the right direction in terms of his metrics. So what is that net amount? Because it seems like 50, 55 is sort of the number you hear circulating. So what are your thoughts on Anthony Elanga?
For me, start at 60. Like what? Like he's 23 years old. His stats are going up every year. It's pace that you can't necessarily replace. We technically did do that. Brennan Johnson got sold, and then we replaced it with Anthony Elanga, but it's still going to be hard to replace again. He's developing within our team amongst players who he's developed a chemistry with, and we don't upset that. 60 is where we start with him, in my eyes. That's it. 60. If they want to start at 60, we'll have a conversation, but he's not going to come cheap. And I wouldn't sell him, but like if we have to sell one marquee player, then start with him at 60 million to begin, at least.
Yeah, I think 60 million is too low. I think it's got to be a minimum of 70 for me. Look at all the comps that have come into the Premier League and players. His assist record, his goal record. He's 23, as you say. He's a young player. 2 years playing lots of football in the Premier League now. I think that if he goes, They've got to maximise the move. I don't want him to go. I really don't. I think we've got to keep him. But we've been talking a lot of PSR and finance stuff on Talking Reds lately, and it feels like one big signing. If it doesn't go this window, we definitely have to think about the one big signing in the maybe January, but probably next summer. So, we've got to try and make the numbers work. Okay, thanks for all of that, Chris. Amazing. We're nearly out of time, but we have got time for this.
Name that grandmother.
Yes. This is my favourite little bit at the end where I ask you some random questions just to find out that little bit extra about you, Chris Aylmer. So here we go. Marmite, love it or hate it?
Hate it. Not for me.
So how am I cooking your steak?
Medium rare.
Good job. What's your favourite cheese?
I like a good brie.
Yes. And what's the best sandwich?
Gosh, I make all sorts of sandwiches. I would say BLT, but I'd probably go with sort of like a version of that with chicken in it as well, and lots of mayonnaise.
Fantastic. What's your favourite film?
Oh, there's so many. Two of the ones that ring out always. I love 90s films. A lot of Quentin Tarantino stuff, Reservoir Dogs. Good Will Hunting is a pretty good film. I'm gonna put that right up there near the top. Or Heat.
Do you know that I only watched Good Will Hunting for the very first time only very recently?
Lucky you.
It's one of those
Great
films. One of those films that I just missed when it came out. And then when you miss, sometimes you just miss a film, and for whatever reason, you just don't see it, and you're going to love it, and everyone else loves it, and everyone who's got the same taste as you loves it. You think, I know I'm going to love that film, and so I watched it, and yeah, it's fantastic, absolutely
class, isn't it? Yeah, class.
There we go. So last question: what are your grandmother's names?
Vera on my mum's side, and Mona on my dad's side. Yeah, Vera and Mona.
That's awesome.
Vera and Mona, absolutely fantastic. Two wonderful grandmother names.
I think people thought they'd be like real Irish names, like my mum's name, which is Bridget.
Siobhan,
Pauline. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think people probably thought that. My mum's name Bridget is pretty Irish, I think. But yeah, Vera and Mona. Yeah,
fantastic. We're done. Bring us to the end. It goes so quickly, and we could chat on and on and on. But Chris Aylmer, it's been an absolute joy having you with us on Talking Reds, and I'm absolutely adamant that this isn't going to be the only time. It may take us another year to get you back, but we will be asking you to come back again. Thank you so much for being with us. You're an absolute legend.
No, listen, thanks for having me. And you guys have done really well the last year. You've been doing it a year now. Fair play to you. And you've like you said, Bruce, Ross, Andrew, some of the people who've come on our podcast are now on yours as well. And obviously we are now finished, but we might do a bonus episode randomly in the future. But look, thanks so much for having me. Richard has been on our podcast before as well. He's someone who we would have got on anyway. He was, Oklahoma, Forest all over the world stuff. But I'm not going to do a big list of thank yous to people, but like there is people I just want to say just really quickly thanks to. Is like Forest all over was not just me at all. It was Matt, my co-host, who was there from the beginning, and he helped massively. And then all the guests and all the people that came on along the way created it. There was people who became regulars, Chris from Dubai and Simon in Bahamas, etc., etc. All those people really special. And Matt Davies is an absolute legend. He had me on Forest Focus near the beginning doing post-match, and I hopefully can continue that with him. And he was on our podcast like 3.5-4 years ago when we were first sort of starting as well. So he's been a really legendary. But just thanks to everyone who's been on the podcast and you guys for having me on, and every other podcast that keeps these things going, because I'll be listening and everyone else will be listening next year when we're winning European trophies and back up the top end of the league. So look, thanks so much for having me. But Forest all over was never just me. It was a lot of other people as well.
Of course.
Brilliant.
Richard Spray, what a guy.
What a guy. As he likes to say, class. Yep.
Fantastic. Anything you want to add before we go, Rich?
No, I'm good. Just appreciate Chris. So you can see the positivity. It's that energy. It's that excitement. It's that love for life and just things in general. Yeah, we talked about movies all the time, right? Grosse Point Blank. If you haven't seen that one, guys, go see Grosse Point Blank. Yeah, that is
class.
Hell of a 90s movies. That is class.
I haven't seen that one either.
Sort it out, Craig.
I know.
Sort it out. We'll send you a list. We'll give you
John
some
Cusack.
homework.
He wrote it too.
Yeah, John Cusack. No, that's a class movie. And shout out to your son, Richard.
Yes, Mason.
Oh,
yeah,
Mason.
he's baking in the heat of Phoenix right now, but yeah, enjoying his time.
Mason, is it? Mason.
Yeah,
He
Mason.
might not listen, but Mason, shout out to you, you absolute legend.
Now he'll watch this one. Now he'll watch our podcast because you're on it.
Amazing. Thank you so much to everyone who's been with us in the comments, listening along. Please do go ahead and hit like and subscribe if you can. It would be really good if you would push that button. We're on X, we're on TikTok, LinkedIn. No, we're not on LinkedIn. We're not on LinkedIn. We're on Instagram.
Oh, no.
On LinkedIn. We might get a LinkedIn profile set up, maybe, but we're on Instagram and Facebook. Our followers are building up on Facebook. We're on about 123 now. That's come out of nowhere. So, yeah, please push all the buttons wherever you can. Time to go. We're going to be back very, very soon, I'm sure, with another episode. It's been an absolute pleasure to have Chris Aylmer with us today for this episode of The One With. So please do show your appreciation wherever possible to Chris. Follow him on X. He'll be back with Forest All Over with Matt at some point in the future, I'm sure. And we look forward to that. But this has been The One With Chris Aylmer. We'll see you soon. Come join Greg and Richard right here on Talking Red.